I think when we think about resilience, it's that ability to keep going while giving yourself permission to be human.
PTSD and anxiety is a real world problem. It's not just for veterans, but we will talk a little bit about veterans. I also want to talk about the difference between grit, resilience, and mental strength. Oftentimes we put all of those together as if they're one quality. And I get to interview someone today who is teaching grit and resilience in a form of insight. And I always talk about mental strength. Real mental strength is from clarity and insight and moving forward with your choices. Listen in. I'm super excited. I'll have you introduce yourself and tell us where you're coming from and why you chose to come on our podcast.
Yeah. My name is Nicole Weiss. I am the Director of Healing and Community Programs at the Lyda Hill Institute for Human Resilience at UCCS.
Tongue twister.
I know. That's
Go back
one
to
title.
Healing and what?
Community programs.
Okay.
So I oversee 2 clinics, the Veterans Health and Trauma Clinic and Milestones Resilience Care, and many, many different training programs where we go out in the community and we teach on stress and trauma and resilience and
so we're
all things in between.
We're on the same, yes.
And I actually used to work with you way back when, over 10 years ago, and used to call you in the middle of the night for crisis consults. I'd always felt bad having to call Christy B in the middle of the night, but so professionally affiliated for a few years, and had somebody reached out a few weeks ago and invited us on, and just I love what you do, and I love the mission you have, and we're I think very parallel, and so just excited to.
And you're also a licensed therapist.
Also a licensed therapist and a licensed addictions counselor.
Okay.
Yes.
So really in that healing therapeutic space. So tell us a little bit of your journey personally, like why did you decide to become a therapist? What kind of has molded you in your life to know that you wanted to make an impact on other people?
Yeah. Multiple pinpoint trajectories, right? One of them is that I have 9 siblings. I'm one of 10, kind of a yours, mine, and ours situation, but grew up in chaos. And
it sounds like chaos, actually.
Right. And I think therapists tend to be born of chaos. And so, not everyone, of course, but, when I think about my siblings, I was the quiet observer, right? And so kind of already had that kind of natural skill. And then really fell in love with the world of psychology when I was in high school. I actually skipped a year for all sorts of reasons, but ended up skipping a year, and in doing so I had to take advanced classes to get enough credits, and one of them was psychology. Fell totally in love with the human brain. Decided to pursue undergraduate degree in psychology, and during that time my brother was in an Air Force Raven in the military, and really severe PTSD. And didn't know a whole lot at the time, but understood enough to know that a lot of his paperwork was blacked out, a lot of his experiences he wasn't allowed to talk about, wasn't allowed to share, and I watched him just decompensate, really tore him apart. And so, a couple more things happened with him. He's in a beautiful, wonderful space now, but his experience really got me fascinated in the world of therapy and how, I could be somebody who could potentially help somebody kind of go through that kind of path. So that really started that trajectory. And then I discovered the UCCS trauma psychology program here, the master's program, and kind of blindly moved to Colorado Springs for this program. From South Carolina, where I was living at the time. I'm a Colorado native, but South Carolina is where I got my undergrad degrees. And then blindly came here, started working in Dr. Charles Benight's lab working in self-efficacy. He told me the vision of the Institute, and I just never left. So, we're 13 years now where I've been connected in with the vision of the Institute and what we're doing, and I absolutely adore the job that I get to do.
Yeah, and part of that is specifically for veterans with PTSD.
Yes.
So let's just take a moment now, because obviously that hits home for you. Tell us, and I'd like to also stop and talk about some of the problems in our mental health culture.
And how much time do we have?
Because I think veterans and lots of people feel like they're not taken care of, and then we have these insurance problems that only cover a certain amount, and I know that you guys are doing very specific work on veterans with PTSD, so tell us a little bit about your program, how it's funded, and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So one of our 2 clinics is the Veterans Health and Trauma Clinic. We launched as a clinic in 2014 with a gift from the Lyda Hill Philanthropies. And that's what really got the clinical space of the Institute started. So we were going on, 12 years strong now with this program. About 85% of our clients are military connected. We see active veteran and family, and then we see emergency responders and a couple other populations, but about 85% are military connected.
Veterans included or only active?
Veterans and active, yes, and then family members as well. And we see around 400 clients a month right now with all of our clinicians and programs. It's been interesting because we've almost always remained very full without any marketing. Our success is very much from word of mouth. And I'm very, very honored to say that because of the trust that we've built in that community. We have some absolute phenomenal clinicians who have built a really high reputation for treating veterans the right way. And so very, very proud of that. We also were privileged to work with the Next Chapter program a few years ago here in Colorado Springs, where we were able to see veterans who were experiencing thoughts of suicide and be able to get them in very quickly and be able to get them really high quality care.
So let's talk about what is high quality care, because people listening don't understand that not all therapists are the same, not all insurance companies. Like the VA doesn't really, like you can go and you can get an appointment with a licensed provider, but you guys are actually offering something way bigger than just that.
Yeah, so I think, and this is a soapbox I will be on for a while. I think the phenomenon of trauma-informed care and communication, phenomenal, wonderful, we need that desperately. It is not enough to be trauma-informed. It is wonderful, and to treat trauma, you need to be specialized, trained in treating trauma. So all of our providers, it's a requirement for us that you have to not only have, be able to do things like EMDR, prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy, you have to also have had worked with this population before. So that's one of our big hallmarks, that we not only know trauma, we treat trauma. So that's one of them. And then the other part is that veterans are such a high priority for us. It's our mission to have somebody contacted back within 24 to 48 hours of the first contact with us, and hopefully scheduled within a week is really our goal. So, and that was true for the Next Chapter program as well. So I think that's a little bit different from the VA, where it could be weeks before you even hear from somebody. Unfortunately, when Next Chapter ended, and for the folks listening, Next Chapter was a really cool pilot program funded by the state to get veterans who were having thoughts of suicide into care, and they paid for, they covered any costs associated with that care. But the goal really was to get veterans in within 48 hours. And so, unfortunately, when that initial funding ended, a lot of the veterans we were seeing, we absolutely would not have just ended their care right then. So we worked with them to get in with the VA and get their other insurances, and it was a nightmare. Because of how long the process was, how long it took for them to get calls returned, the mixed messages they received. Some veterans, their history with the VA was so terrible, they just flat out refused. So then we had to kind of work with that situation. So a lot of nuances, and I know there's phenomenal therapists that work in the VA, no doubt at all. And the process is just so convoluted that it's an incredible disadvantage to the veterans.
Well, it's discouraging for them.
Absolutely. Oh, asking for help is so hard. If you don't get an immediate, okay, I'm here, you might lose the person right there.
Yeah. We're going to go on to your other programs, but if somebody is listening right now and wants to be evaluated for your PTSD veterans program, what do they do?
Well, they just call us.
Okay.
As simple as that. So if I can share, 719-255-8003, or you can find us online. But we'll chat with you. We'll figure out what's going on, and then we get you in with a clinician very quickly.
And who pays for that, though?
Great question. So we do take most insurances. We take VA, we take TRICARE, we take them pretty much.
You don't need a VA referral. You can actually bill directly, or how does that work? I know the I know the tricks. I know how complicated it can be.
Typically, you do still need a referral. We have a great relationship with the VA. We have some really skilled billing folks that work with us, and so we are usually able to make that process smooth. But yeah, typically you still need a referral from the VA for community care.
Yeah, that's how that works. But I'm glad you've figured that out as far as making it easier for people.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second.
Please.
You guys use the word grit and resilience in a lot of your training programs. And I know you and I know what you're teaching. But I think the community sees grit and resilience as kind of compartmentalizing and pushing through.
Oh, yeah.
They don't actually think of it as resilience. And, we have people, poster children like David Goggins, like this is what grit and resilience is. And kudos to him. I know he has his own trauma and he's working it out physically, but not everybody can do that. And so I want to talk a little bit about those words that we use, because I talk about mental strength being more than that. Like, there are times where we have to have grit, right? We just have to push through, but we also have a limit. Yeah. Like we if you only push through, you are going to hit your threshold and have a nervous breakdown, have physical, like something is going to happen. Resiliency, as I described, as like showing up, even though, right?
Yeah.
But even though you're working, like you should be working it out in the background. And another word we as therapists use a lot is processing. Well, you need to process these things, but we don't teach how to process.
Right. Right.
So let's go there. Those are my little soapboxes. Talk to me about your grit resiliency training that you guys have and how that is different.
Yeah, so GRIT is a program that started with the pandemic. We launched it in April of 2020. Great timing. And it's really, the way I like to kind of talk about it is it's basic first aid for social support. Anybody can reach out and put a Band-Aid on. And this is really what GRIT is about, that anybody can reach out and say, hey, I notice you and I see you and I'm here with you. And hands down, I truly believe that's the most powerful part of social connection, is just that notice, I see you. I think when we think about resilience, it's that ability to keep going while giving yourself permission to be human. And I think
I love that.
Yeah, that's really the sentiment I think I've been sharing a lot for the past few years. And I've done a lot of work with healthcare workers and emergency responders and military. And I think we tend to hold ourselves to such a high standard, therapists included, we hold ourselves to such a high standard that we don't give ourselves permission to be human.
Yeah.
And when you think about, that processing and that keeping going despite and all of that, I think there's a space to really honor the very human experience we're having. This is hard. It's a hard world to live in. There's a lot going on. I just got asked this question of, what's like, what keeps you up at night? And I think it's the compoundingness of it. It's the weight of it all.
Yeah.
And so you just get to be human, and by allowing yourself that grace and that permission, I think it really propels us forward in different ways. If I could share very, very quickly, my husband is kind of going through his own kind of self-healing journey right now. And he had this weekend where he just had so much anxiety, he kept apologizing. And I was like, you get to be anxious sometimes. Right. I can give you every skill in the world.
Yeah.
And you just get to be anxious.
And it's hard to be married to a therapist.
I know, I feel poor guy, I know.
My husband used to say, don't try to psychobabble me right now.
The amount of times he has told me, like, can you just be my wife? Can you just be my wife?
Yeah.
But he was doing all the skills, he was doing everything right, and he was like, they're not working, I'm just so anxious. And I'm like, sometimes you just are, and that's okay too. Yeah. And I think that's what we kind of lose in this like high performance world we live in.
Right. So back to you, of like, when was there a time in your life you wished you had more mental strength? Like, if you wish you knew what you know now back then, what would you do differently?
Yeah, so I like to say that I always had like kind of an underlying anxiety and just tend to be kind of an anxious person. And I remember so many times of having panic attacks and so many times of kind of being immobilized by what do I do and the anxiety. And then I had a house fire in 2017, 3 weeks before my wedding day. My entire top floor, my wedding dress, everything gone. And the anxiety gone with it. And I have never felt that same level. And it was such an interesting message to me of like, it wasn't in my control. And at the end of the day, what do I get to control? And it's not any of those pieces. So I still have, anxious times and I still get, those feelings, but I've never had that same level of it's out of my control and that's okay.
Right. And how do you shift yourself now? Because I always like to give like tools for listeners, like when you feel that anxiety rising. Because I also talk about anxiety is normal. Like, let's just bring it down.
Permission to be
human. It's not going to go away. What kind of things do you do to bring it down?
Two things. So one is that exact question. What's in my control right now? And usually what's causing us anxiety are those things that are out of our control. So we can kind of give ourselves that message of like, hey, it's whatever happens is going to happen. And what I can control right now, is X, Y, Z. Yeah. And I talk about that with my clients all the time as well. Yeah. The other kind of trick I sometimes do, and again, teach this with my clients as well, is this helpful? Right, and I think sometimes we can spin in thoughts, and we can go through all the scenarios, and it's that whole like I'm lying in bed at 2:00 in the morning. Is this helpful very rarely is it helpful. Is it doing anything for me? Probably not. So I kind of like those two challenges to myself. What's in my control? Is this helpful?
Yeah.
The other, I guess so third, is if I give any attention to the negative, it's only fair to give the same amount of attention to the positive. So when we think about worst case scenarios, that's fine. And I tell this to my clients too, like we'll go, let's do it. All the worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
And we just did 10 minutes on that, 10 minutes on the best case scenario. It's only fair, right? And I have found that ability to balance that out. And, you know, again, my husband's example of how anxious he was. Monday, his situation rolled around, and it was the best case scenario. And I was like, see? So sometimes that exercise is exactly what we needed. We have such a negative skew, and it's only fair to balance that out.
Yeah. And in the Mentally Strong method, I asked this question of, like, when was the first time you felt like this? Like, did you feel anxious in your childhood? And we know that that's kind of psychoanalytical. But convincing people that behavioral patterns actually started in childhood, probably under 7 years old, right?
Right.
We know this from our lots of education. How do you incorporate that when you're teaching at the, you know, more of the educational level? And you know, like with your husband, and male veterans are a little harder to acknowledge that the childhood is impacting them today.
Yes. One of the things we talk about a lot in our trainings that I jokingly say is, and I try to use a lot of humor, is we have dumb, smart brains. Your brain is very smart. You are capable, you are accomplished, you can do amazing things. You're dumb, your brain's a little dumb. One of the reasons in that is that it's always just trying to survive. Right at the end of the day, almost every behavior we developed because it tried to survive. And I think exactly your point of we developed these behaviors because 7-year-old us was trying to survive. And then the brain goes, oh great, that worked once, I'll do it every time. Right? And we have to like reteach our brain that, hey, I'm not this 7-year-old vulnerable child right now. I'm capable of so much more than that. And so we have to kind of like reteach our brain some of those pieces. But that's been a message I've conveyed a lot of, you were trying to survive. And that's okay. Right? You just don't need to survive in the same way today. So how do we get to a different space?
Yeah, for sure. And how do you see being one of 10 impacting your anxiety?
Like I said, that was the quiet sibling, the observer sibling, and I think I still am. My brother still calls me every once in a while. He goes, okay, how much for a session? $200, my understanding, right? Yeah, it's an interesting, because like I said, you know, yours, mine, and ours kind of family. I have 6 step siblings, 3, you know, biological, and then a half sibling, and just the way we all kind of approach challenges is a little bit different. And so to kind of have those learning lessons as I went along, and I'm the second youngest, so I got to watch, you know, 8 before me kind of be in this world, and just absorbing and listening and watching.
Yeah. And how does faith play a part in your personal journey? And, you know, it's one of those things that we're almost scared to talk about as licensed professionals because we have to keep it separate and those kinds of things. But I have found that many people are struggling with their spiritual health. And I'm not saying a specific belief system, but just that we are a spiritual being. So tell us a little bit about your faith journey and how you help others.
Yeah. So I was raised in a certain religion that I don't feel attached to that one anymore. However, I have that same pull, right, again, to that spirituality, and trying to figure out the ones that fit best for me. And the way I describe spirituality is it's your ability to connect with something bigger than yourself, something outside of yourself.
I use that one too.
Because then it could be so many things, right? It's nature, it's religion, it's you know, the unknown. There's all these different concepts we can do. But I do firmly believe there's something bigger than us. And if we allow ourselves to feel like things are not happening for a reason, I've never loved that.
That's a little trigger, but
and if we can have faith that things will keep going, right, and hope that tomorrow looks different, and I think allowing that acceptance is part of that spiritual world. I believe in something. I don't know what it is yet, but it's bigger than me and it's bigger than us.
Yeah. What do you wish other people understood about mental strength, their mental health journey, those kinds of things? Like, just not necessarily people you're working with, just the world.
We are social creatures. That's been one of my biggest messages, especially coming off of, the GRIT program, what we developed. We are social creatures. We are co-regulating species. And so leaning on each other, I think, is so incredibly important. And we live in such a connected, disconnected world that we've lost that. We talk about, we have this tendency to what I call like drive-by check-ins, right? Like if I saw you in the hallway and I'd say like, hey, Dr. B, how are you? And before you've had a chance to answer, I'm like in my office, right? And so we have these connections that are not authentic and are not vulnerable. And I think it's really important that we slow those back down and we connect with one another. And you don't have to say a whole lot, but that ability to just be, I think, is so powerful and such a huge trademark of resilience. Yeah. You talk to anybody who feels like they're a resilient person, they've got somebody in their corner. And I think that's an important piece.
Yeah, for sure. So the last question is, what are you currently learning for yourself in your journey?
So I took a kind of a mission this last year to really get more in my community. And so there's been a couple of different ways. I'm part of the Colorado Springs Mayor's Fellowship, and so getting literally into the behind the scenes of the city, and I've been meeting with a lot more community partners and just people that are doing incredible things and learning and absorbing. And so that's been kind of my mission right now is what else is out there. Yeah. Especially in at the end of the day, we all want our own programs to be successful, of course, but taking a non-competitive lens to just be curious and say, what's out there and what can I learn from you? And how do we kind of grow each other and make each other stronger? Yeah. So that's the space I'm in.
That's exactly why you're here. Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What a great interview on mental strength. And I hope you have a better understanding of resilience and grit and mental strength, and that you can learn mental strength. Click the link in the description to be invited to a free webinar that allows you to understand the Mentally Strong method, which is, can I think through my problems? Can I organize my thoughts? Can I make choices in line with what I want? I hope to see you there.